Garza. And before we launch into today's idea in the workbook for students, which is very profound and about which, as you might imagine, I have a lot to say, very much. I want to just announce that tomorrow I'm going to have a special guest on this show. And I've had a few guests. Marbeth Dunn recently, my wife Cindy has joined me, Kim Venter has joined me. Now tomorrow at 12 o'clock p.m. Eastern Daylight Time in North America, 9 a.m. Pacific Time, Deb Goldberg will be joining me. Now, you may know Deb from this network, from Enlightened World Network. Deb has been a longtime student of A Course in Miracles, and she has had a show right here on the network. So she will join me tomorrow to talk about her experience with A Course in Miracles. And this is going to be a great conversation. Deb and I have chatted beforehand, and she's a lot of fun. If you had never did get to catch Deb's show, catch her tomorrow. So tune in right here. I'll announce this again at the end of the live today, but that's tomorrow at noon Eastern, 9 Pacific here in North America. Yeah, with Deb Goldberg, my special guest. So that's going to be fun. Anyway, thank you all for tuning in today. Whether you're catching this on the replay or here live, it is a beautiful Sunday morning here in Arizona, in North America. And I'm really inspired about today's lesson. Honestly, you could say that every day. I'm always inspired to show up and turn the camera on and talk with all of you about my experience with A Course in Miracles, with spirituality in general. And I thank you all so much for tuning in. It's a lot of fun for me. Today's lesson really kind of cuts right to the chase. And I'm noticing as I've been conducting this live stream for the last couple of months that I'm actually cutting right to the chase too. And I love it. I absolutely love it. Each and every one of these live streams is, in fact, an invitation to you to choose love. It's an invitation for you, to choose your true self and acknowledge the truth about yourself each and every time. Yeah, this is what it's all about. And I lovingly extend this invitation to you. These are simple principles. Reality is much simpler than we think. And to experience this reality is also simpler than we think. In fact, it's really easy. All it requires is a decision right now to experience this, a choice right now in the present moment. When else? To choose love. That's all it requires. That's all it's ever required. And we complicate things in the world, don't we? We complicate things. We make things difficult for ourselves. A Course tells us repeatedly, there is no order of difficulty in miracles. One is just like another. There is no order of difficulty in miracles. They're all the same. They're all the same. And that means that all of the categories that we make in the world are just things that we've made up. We've invented levels. We've invented gradations. We've invented a lot of layers, complications. And why? Why? Fear. The fear of, not of our darkness, it's fear of our light, isn't it? It's fear of acknowledging who we really, truly are. And once you make a decision in favor of love, in favor of God, it's that much easier to make a decision again the next moment. Same decision. When these compound, you begin to experience what people call a shift, a total change in your experience, in the way you experience yourself, in the way you experience other people and the world. All of it. All of it. No limitations, no exceptions. This is all of our birthright. It is your birthright. It is available to you right now, today, for the choosing. I could just say that and only that on every live stream, and frankly, end the broadcast. And that would be enough. But I won't, because I have more to say. So let's go into lesson 50 here. This is lesson 50 of the workbook for students in A Course in Miracles. I am sustained by the love of God. I am sustained by the love of God, not by anything else. Well, what else is there? And what else would you rather be sustained by? Yourself, right? Yourself in the world. Would you rather be sustained by your last meal that you ate? And how long will that sustain you? Will it sustain you beyond time? I think not, right? As grateful as we may be for things like food, water, medicine, yeah, pills, medications, the body may need them to keep going. And as long as we're here and we're able to feed ourselves, to clothe ourselves, to access medical care, if we need to access medical care, then yes, let's do it. The body is a communication mechanism. This is how we communicate with everyone else. That's it. That's its purpose. Its purpose is going to be whatever we choose it to be. This is why a choice is so important. Do we choose love? Do we choose fear? The body serves our choice. If we choose love, the body serves our choice of love. I'm serving it right now by broadcasting to all of you worldwide. If you select fear, then the body serves that purpose. We lash out at each other. We attack one another. We become ill. Right? We manufacture difficulties where we don't need to. We're not, in fact, deep truth sustained by food, water, pills, physical exercise, clothing, the electric lights that power our computers so they can charge up, right? The light that is plugged in right now overhead. Yeah, none of that. What we're talking is ultimate truth. And I want to make a distinction here between ultimate and relative. Ultimate truth, you may have heard, is also called absolute truth. This is what we're talking about in A Course in Miracles. Ultimately, this is what any spiritual practice, no matter what the outward form is, talks about. Absolute truth, the truth of what simply is, our own being. Relative, everything here in the world, right? Food, medication, our job, our house, our Twitter feed, all of those things belong to the realm of relative truth. Now, in the realm of relative truth, if you have access to medical care, access medical care. Yeah, be grateful for your next meal. I just ate some really delicious scrambled eggs with melted Oaxaca cheese and fresh hatch green chili. Now, if you come from the Southwest of the United States, you'll know how good that really is. And let me just tell you about it. It was delicious. All right. I'm grateful for it. How long will that sustain me? Well, it's going to sustain me for a few hours. Is that forever or eternity? No. It doesn't matter how good it is. Now, we identify ourselves with the relative. We identify ourselves with the body. We identify ourselves, in other words, with the ego, a separate sense of self. Needlessly. And we endow all of these things with tremendous importance. And they are important in the world. Clothing is important in the world to protect us from the elements and sometimes to make us look cool. Okay, I mean, it has value, it has importance, and food has importance. I love a great meal. Water has importance, right? Sustenance has importance. A roof over our heads has great importance here in the world. Your job, your career has importance here in the world. Ultimately, in terms of ultimate truth, it's just nothing because only ultimate truth exists. In other words, only our true essence is real. Course says this in so many different ways that nothing unreal exists and nothing real can be threatened. It says it the flip flop, nothing real can be threatened, nothing unreal exists. Therein lies the peace of God. We are sustained by the love of God. Why? It's what we are. One with means same as. Yeah. So the Course tells us, and it tells us in today's workbook lesson, that all of the things that we cherish and value so deeply in this world are actual replacements that we've put in, that we've interposed between ourselves and the love of God. That's it. And think about how attached we get to some things. Yeah, if we're out to dinner at a restaurant and we want to order a particular thing and they're out of it, we get disappointed, right? We experience disappointment. Oh man, they're out of this, out of that. Yeah. If you don't find what you're looking for at the store, people might put a lot of emphasis on that. They might get disappointed in that. We get disappointed at what people say and do in the world all of the time. These are all replacements for the love of God, which in truth, I mean absolute truth when I say in truth, sustains us. It's constant. It's absolutely 100% constant, and it sustains us. It is, in fact, the answer to every question that we might ask. It is the answer to all of your questions. So, another way of looking at this, if you're following along and doing the math, so to speak, you are the answer to all of your questions. You are the answer. Now, just because the things of the world, relative truth, are in fact illusory, doesn't mean that we neglect them, does it? It does not mean that. We're here to learn. We're here to awaken. We're here to communicate with other beings, with other people, with animals, with nature, with the earth itself, everything. We're here to communicate. So we find that the way to the absolute truth is through the relative, right? We use the body. We don't negate it. We don't neglect it. We use it for a different purpose than we're using it for right now. Course tells us we give it over to the Holy Spirit, give it over to God, give it over to your guides to direct you in its use. That's what it's for, is to extend love. We could also choose to perpetuate fear and keep ourselves and everyone else trapped in an endless cycle of conflict, of war, of genocide, of illness, everything. We could continue to run around. That's what the Buddhists call samsara. Literally in Sanskrit, it means wheel. And it's a wheel of suffering and coming back, rebirth, whether you believe in it or not, doesn't matter. If you identify with the ego and a body, what's going to happen when you leave the body? You're going to seek another one, right? You identify with it. Yeah, that's rebirth. So again, you may believe in that, you may not. It doesn't actually matter for the purposes of A Course in Miracles or this exercise. In fact, if you do, it's really quite helpful because it perpetuates the belief, the knowledge, the experience of life beyond just the physical body. But it's the tool that we use. So yes, access everything that you can, right? Food, water, medical care. Yeah, all of that. That's our job here when these things are in use, right? When we're here in the relative, and I've just called the body a thing because that's really all it is. It's just a thing, right? It's a communication tool for us. In repeating today's idea, I'm sustained by the love of God, we're acknowledging the truth about ourselves. Now, what happens when you recite this idea? What happens when you practice this workbook lesson? What happens when you do this day in, day out for more? And I'm going to say more than just 365 days. This is not something where you get to the end and you're completely done. It's always part of a journey. This is why I've done the workbook a couple of times now. This is the third time that I've gone through it personally. You may have done it more than that, actually. Many of you have. So you'll know that, yeah, it doesn't just automatically end when you end lesson 365. You could reach the end and practice everything diligently and still identify with the ego and need to go through it another time, perhaps. We're just acknowledging the truth about ourselves. So, what happens when you do? Well, life shows up differently. How has it shown up differently for me? Well, I'll tell you from my own experience. Things are more effortless, they flow. Why? Because I'm getting out of my own way. I'm not attempting to manipulate and orchestrate and plot and plan nearly as much as I used to, say, 5 to 10 years ago. I've noticed a profound shift from this course. Things are easier. And what I find is that I'm able to speak and act with crystal clarity and certainty. Do you want to act in the world with crystal clarity and certainty, knowing that everything that you say is precisely what's meant to be said and will be in the highest good of everyone around you? Everyone. We can't guarantee that if we're running around dazed and confused and in our own way, can we? We don't know, because we might say something that's helpful to one person and not to another. And we just don't know. Who knows? Well, the Holy Spirit knows. Take the Holy Spirit as your guide. Or if you have a different guide, stick with that guide. Yeah. It's something greater than our small sense of self, right? And we find that actually reality is far greater than our small sense of self, because ultimately that small sense of self is not real. It's a construct that we've made up. The beauty of all of this is, having made it up, we can unmake it. So I invite you to make the choice of love today. As often as you remember it, if you're following along here in the workbook, today's lesson is lesson 50. I am sustained by the love of God. Practice this, even if it only involves your reciting this a few times today when you remember it. That is wonderful. If you're able to do that, do that. Do this as you are able. And if you're able to do all of the workbook exercises precisely as a course lays them out and suggests, then that is truly fabulous. That's when we begin to experience, honestly, tremendous shifts. So I'm scrolling here to find the live, and thank you all for tuning in. So there's several of you joining us here today. Hello, Robert, how are you? And Cindy, hi, how are you? Good morning. And it looks like Lilia and Lori, a couple other people are here. Thank you guys for tuning in. I really appreciate your joining me here today. And yeah, so Robert has a question, really good question. Let's talk about this. Could our physical body be sustained only by light? Well, uh, I've studied a lot of Tibetan Buddhism in my lifetime, so I've heard anecdotes that I personally can't vouch for because I have not experienced this myself, of monks, and you may have heard of this, going into deep meditation in caves or otherwise for a prolonged period of time with very little food or water as sustenance, and meditating and surviving and even thriving. So that tells us that yes, but I think that if we don't have that ability or that background or skill in the world, if we get hungry, we would be very well served to eat a meal, eat an energy bar, whatever it is. If we get thirsty, we do really well to have a sip of water. Because to me, this is my take, the goal is not to achieve Jedi powers, right, in the world, supposedly otherworldly or superhuman powers. The goal to me is to choose love and to wake up to our own shared reality. So, whatever that looks like, for me, that meant cooking some scrambled eggs with Oaxaca cheese and hatch green chili this morning, because we're going for a hike. Cindy and I are going for a hike, and I don't want to have a very low energy level while I do that. So while that may technically be possible, I'm not planning to try it. And if other people want to, that's fine. But honestly, I'm also a chef, guys. I like to cook a lot, and yeah, I can't imagine a world where I'm not preparing a meal at least some of the time and getting to enjoy eating it. But that's it's really quite a good question, because here we are saying, okay, we're not all of these things, but absolute and relative truth, right? We can't completely bypass all of this. We've all heard the term spiritual bypassing. That's negating everything. And, we use the tools that we're given, just give them over. In the Course in Miracles, we give them over to the Holy Spirit. We give the body over to the Holy Spirit. We give our relationships, all of them, over to the Holy Spirit. Practice this. The more you do this, the ease will begin to flow. The certainty with which you operate will begin to be very, very, very clear. It's really, really super inspiring. So I love the question. Yeah. Yes. And yeah, there's some comments here about rebirth. Yeah. Again, the course. If you want to look up what A Course in Miracles says about this, look in the manual for teachers, which is the third component. It's toward the back after the text in the workbook. There is a specific question about, is reincarnation so? And the answer succinctly is, well, do you believe in it? And if the answer is no, okay, that's the answer. If the answer is yes, then that's the answer. And it's helpful because it points to life beyond just the physical body, our own short lifetime not being the only thing that actually is. So to that extent, yes, it's very helpful. It doesn't really matter if you believe in it or not. Again, A Course in Miracles applies no matter what your religious or spiritual background is. It can be practiced and learned by any person on this planet, period. Really, literally anybody. Yeah. So hello, everybody else that's watching. Hi. This is so much fun for me to be able to interact with all of you. So it's a short live stream. It may be evident that I could go on for a long, long time, and I can, but we'll be back tomorrow. All right. These are in half an hour time slots, so it's relatively short. And if I did not get to your comments or your questions here today, feel welcome to type them in here into the chat, and I will look at them throughout the day, because I do that because I'd like to have as much dialogue with you all as I possibly can. So inviting you again to choose love right now, and then the next moment, then the next moment after that, until you begin to have a completely different experience. And once you do, keep choosing love, because that's what I find I need to do, is stay hyper vigilant. You know, because our habitual tendencies are always there, right? Something may come up that really aggravates or annoys us, and we need to return our minds to this spiritual practice. Okay, so we're going to take a pause for one day here in the workbook. Deb Goldberg, who used to have a show here on EWN, is going to join me as my special guest tomorrow. So the time for that, you don't want to miss that, noon Eastern, 12 o'clock Eastern time, 9 a.m. Pacific. Deb is going to talk about her experience with A Course in Miracles, and I can tell you it's going to be a wonderful conversation. So that is tomorrow. Thank you all for joining me today. And we'll be right back into the workbook lessons on Tuesday this week. So thank you all so much for joining in here today and for all of your comments, questions, the shares. It is my absolute pleasure to be here sharing my experience with you. And I'm learning a great deal from all of you. So I thank you all for showing up with your own practice, whatever that looks like, and for tuning in here today. All right. We'll see